Hello, friend. I am so excited you're here today because I have a great interview for you. And we're talking about how niching down actually helped this particular yoga teacher to make more money. And I know you're curious now because when I say, how can you make more money as a yoga teacher? I know your ears are perking up. But when I say niching down, I also understand that that comes with a lot of fear that we won't earn more money. Because by narrowing down our focus, that is the natural thought of, if I narrow my focus, I won't earn more money. But I like to share as many stories as possible to show you that niching down actually helps you earn more money because we get really specific of what we're trying to do. So I have an interview with Dominique Gauthier, and she has really niched down. And when I say she has embraced the idea of niching down, she really, really has, and has amazed me in this process. She is actually a founding member inside my membership, so I have had a front row seat of witnessing her go through this process. And let me tell you, she says it way better than me, so I'm going to let you listen in to the interview, but she has really embraced the idea of niching down, and as soon as she did that, she stepped into her voice, and she had one of the biggest months in her business to date. And not only did she have one of the biggest revenue months that she's had, that has continued to happen. So it hasn't slowed down. She's actually earning more money as soon as she really stepped into that voice and stepped into her true passion. So let me tell you a little bit about Dominique before I share the interview with you. She is a yoga teacher and a personal trainer for women, very specifically, to help them build and reclaim their strength and confidence from the inside out. She specializes in managing and preventing symptoms of core and pelvic floor dysfunction that go way beyond your mama's kegels. And she loves what she does. You're going to hear this in her voice. Her passion absolutely comes through, and you are going to gain so much insight from this episode. But before I share the amazing interview with you, I want to welcome you to the Marketing Yoga with Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Amanda McKinney, and I absolutely love sharing stories just like this so that you can take action in your yoga business. And this episode is brought to you by my free guide of getting more butts on mats. And yes, you guessed it, it's all about stepping into your niche. Because after you hear from Dominique and how this has impacted her business, I know that you're going to want to take action. So I have a free guide to get you going and take you step by step through the process of declaring your niche. And you can find that at marketingyogawithconfidence.com/learn. So I want you to go and download that free guide so you can start making more money just like Dominique has. But I won't make you wait any longer. Let's dive into that interview with Dominique. Thank you, Dominique, for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I love that you're here. I love that I get to be the first podcast interview that you're doing. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that you're going to do many more because you are on fire. And I know you because you are in my membership, which is amazing. But for those in the audience who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you and the yoga that you share with your students.
All right. So I'm a yoga teacher and a personal trainer and the owner of Body Mind Fitness. I also love popcorn and I talk a lot about vaginas. And I'm sure my mom is going to listen to this and she's going to be rolling her eyes. Hi, Mom. Because the first time I talked about peeing my pants online, she's like, why are you saying that? So I do specialize in core and pelvic floor health. And my goal is to help women build and reclaim their strength and confidence. I do one-on-one sessions and small group classes that provide the individual attention of private sessions. So all of my classes run as multiple week series and they sign up for the whole thing. This gives me the opportunity to really get to know them a little bit more intimately than if they just kind of came and went here and there. And this allows me to prep the classes for exactly who is in the class. I do open up extra room for drop-ins, but nobody really takes advantage of them, probably because I'm pretty clear that this is why I'm doing this. This also kind of gives me the ability to give all kinds of options for exactly who's in class. So even though I teach some of the same classes that sort of have the same skeleton in a week, different classes will have different options. And then I provide education with it. And I like to think I provide a body positive, sustainable approach. So they really feel successful coming out of the class. And this is a much different career than I thought I'd have, because originally I was an actor, and my only involvement, I guess, with physical activity was a 51% in my last gym class.
That's great. What an evolution, right? Like,
Yeah.
if that's not the reason to think, like, it doesn't matter if you weren't great at something, you can be really successful at that thing. I think that's a great story.
Yeah. I like to throw that in there. Like, hey, I used to not know how to move either, and I couldn't touch my toes either. And it's still the biggest running gag in my family as well. It's like, you own a yoga studio and you had 1% in grade 9 gym.
That's great. Oh, that's so good. And it's just a testament to, following your passion, right? Like, you probably didn't even know that was a passion, but at some point along your journey, you stumbled into a yoga class somehow, and it struck a chord with you, and you just followed that, and then you followed it, and you're super successful now. So that 51% is not an indicator of how you can move your body now.
Yeah, let's just make sure we don't tell kids that, because they'll be like, oh, I don't need to do
Right.
that. Who cares about my grade?
Right, exactly. You should always get high grades, and we call it PE. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but
We call it phys ed, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
physical education, PE, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's no kids listening to my podcast
Yeah.
right now, unless they're in the car with their parent, but if so, make sure you get good grades, but even if you don't, you can actually continue to succeed for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I love how you set up what you do, because there's so many nuggets inside of how you set that up. Like, number one, you know your niche. So we are absolutely going to be diving into that. That is something that I talk about all the time. And that's why you are absolutely the person I wanted to interview, because I have watched the success of your business as you have further niched down and gotten really clear. But not only did you recognize, okay, this is the type of person I want to work with, but you have a really specific way of holding space for a class. So the idea that you basically offer class series or workshop series at a time is so different from a lot of yoga studios and yoga teachers who teach one class a week at this one studio. So how did you get to that, and like, which one came first, niching down or hosting those series?
It would be the hosting the series. That seemed to come a little bit easier. My background came from a big box gym, which I won't say just in case, maybe. And one thing that I really had trouble with was when I could see somebody was struggling with something, I wanted to help them a little bit more. And I couldn't, because my job was to stay on stage and not just talk people through it, but also do the workout with them. So we're covering kind of the auditory listeners as well as the the auditory learners as well as the visual learners. And it was, I think, part of the insurance as well that I had to just stay on stage.
You're right.
So I think that was a big part in that too. So that was always kind of at the back of my mind. And I always wanted to be doing a little bit more, but again, because I just kind of I really did just stumble into this career kind of accidentally. My first yoga class was not love at first sight. It was like love at fifth attempt and sixth. But that's probably a story for another day. And when I went on, actually, when I was pregnant with my first child, I was encouraged to go to a local prenatal yoga class. A friend of a friend knew somebody, and I ended up in this class. And I immediately fell in love. I felt so supported. It was a smaller group. Like, it wasn't like 30, 40, 60 people. It was like 12 people. And I think that was max. So it might have not even been full. And I just felt super supported in this space. And I came out going, my passion for yoga has been reunited, and this is what I want to do. And I don't know how much of it was the small group versus the prenatal portion that was kind of struck with that, because I ended up specializing in prenatal and postnatal to start. And I started doing that when my firstborn was very, very little. So I have actually 2 birthed children and 2 bonus kids. The bonus ones I did not birth, but I've been in their life for a long, long time. So while I was on maternity leave, I started looking into different prenatal, postnatal certifications. That's how I actually met Shannon Crow from the Connected Yoga Teacher. And then this opportunity came to open my own space. So my best friend at the gym was engaged to a guy who also worked at the same gym who was striking out on his own. He was a personal trainer, and he got in touch with me and said, "Hey, I have this extra room. Do you want to like create a business and teach in this space?" And I was like, "Okay." And he allowed me to pay rent hourly. So if I didn't have a class, I didn't have to pay. It was a really nice way to kind of start things off. I feel very lucky that I was in that situation because he really didn't mind if it was a last minute cancellation. I was like, nope, nobody signed up for this class, so I'm going to go home. And at first I did just open up a whole bunch of classes across the board and just sat there waiting for people to come. And at the grand opening, I sold packages, so I didn't know when these people would be coming in. So I just sat there, and then at the end of the day, I was like, oh, nobody came in. Okay, I guess I'm going to go home now. And then that's when I thought, so at that time, I actually ended up hiring Shannon as my first business coach, and she gave me the idea of running series. And I got rid of them all and only did 2 evening classes. And that was it. That's all I offered was 2 evening classes on a Tuesday, Thursday, 5:45 till 6:45. So then flash forward, this place where I took prenatal yoga was looking for instructors at the same time I was opening my business, specifically for boot camp, which is not really what I wanted to do, but I do have a background in fitness. So I thought, you know what? I'll give it a try. It was actually my husband who said, if you don't apply, you're going to regret it. So just apply, see what happens, and make a decision from there. And I said, okay. So I did apply. I did get the job, and I ended up teaching stroller boot camp classes, which
that's a fun name.
Yeah, stroller boot camp, which I have my own opinions on that now, knowing what I know, but I didn't know any better. I was just like, yeah, sure. It's a thing and I'll do it. I get to work with babies and moms, and I get to bring my kid to work, and this is awesome.
Right.
Flash forward to when I was 8 months postpartum. So this is about 2 months after I opened my studio. So my little one is 8 months old, and I was cooking in the kitchen, and I just started peeing my pants.
Oh,
it just like no jumping, no sneezing, no laughing, none of the things that people say, oh, don't make me do that, or I might pee my pants. I was just standing there cooking, and I was like, this is happening. This is happening now, and there is nothing I can do about it. And then afterwards, I cried because I was like, I'm 31 years old and I am going to be in diapers now for the rest of my life. Because I thought it was one of those things, you get it and it never goes away. Like you're just like that forever. So given the job that I was working at, they did have a pelvic floor physiotherapist on staff. So I made an appointment with her thinking that she was just going to verify the fact that I needed to go out and buy adult diapers. And she actually said, no, this is something we can actually fix. And she said, and in your case, it's not even a big situation. So pelvic floor physiotherapist does an internal exam. And she was like, yeah, there's nothing crazy going on here. This is probably going to be fixed in a few weeks. And my mind was blown.
Wow. Yeah.
My mind was blown. Going from thinking I was going to be stuck in diapers forever to being told this is going to be better in a couple weeks was life-changing. So I was lucky enough that this particular pelvic floor physiotherapist of mine gave me my first crash course in pelvic health. So she did a little mini training where I was working. I think it was 2 or 3 hours. And we just started talking about things. And as someone who also didn't do well in I was like, everyone's like, why is she doing this job? I was really amazed by the anatomy of it. So even though I had started specializing in pregnancy and postnatal, now my attention was sort of going more towards the pelvic health arena. I started doing more trainings, reading books by the dozens on how I can start incorporating this into my classes somehow.
Right.
But also,
I love it.
Yeah.
This is so cool. I like how, I talk about niching down all the time, and I talk about how it's an evolution, right? Like it's always changing. And I think that that's one time when yoga teachers will hear, what's your niche? They'll hear me ask that question, or they'll feel that hesitation. And I'm like, it's not forever. Just pick something right now and see where it takes you. And you did exactly that. You followed a path, and it's not uncommon to follow a path that you dealt with. Like, you had a kitchen moment that now you can talk about. I guarantee there are women listening to this podcast episode right now who are like, yep, that happened. That happened to me too. And you can resonate with them because you followed what happened to you. And because you did that and you were like, I just want to learn more for me and I can help other people. Whoa, mind blown. I can do this. And you just follow that passion, which is so huge. And that is what niching down is. I know it seems so like super scary at first, but when it really comes down to it, it's like, it's just settling into where our passion is.
Definitely. And I love what I do now. But it took quite a while for me to be like, this is what I do, because you're scared. You're scared you're going to cut people off, and people aren't going to come to you because they feel like, oh, well, she only works with people who pee their pants.
Right.
And it seems super like limiting in a way, because I don't even think at the time I realized how many people this affected.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, so what? Like 2 people are going to come see me? Oh, I don't want to do that.
Right.
So I really beat it around the bush for a while.
Right. Well, I think we all do. And you kind of did this, following the journey. If you could see my hands, I know this is an audio podcast, but I'm like moving my hands so much. Like this path was so different and so wavy, like it's going down this path of like, at first you thought, I just don't have people coming to my class. So I'm going to limit the classes, which was a great suggestion for you to do. You limited the class, you packed those classes. I'm making some assumptions here, so correct me if I'm wrong. But you started filling your classes because you had less of them and they were concentrated. And then you started niching down with, oh, I kind of want to focus on this one area. So now I'm going to offer these class series to these people who I know I can help. And because it was so specific, you filled them.
Yeah. So I actually I do only 2 types of classes at my studio. So I do yoga for core and pelvic health is what I call it, because I'm not going to lie. Like, first of all, the core is related to the pelvic floor, but there's also, people are like, oh, she works with the core.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
I just threw that in there to be like, hey, it's not just your lady bits we're talking about here, that there's other things to focus on as well.
Yeah. And you have to, you have identified what your dream student needs to hear, right? Yeah. You've identified that word, the word core helps people walk through the door, but you probably help more so with pelvic health, right? Like, yes, we're helping with the core, because who doesn't need core strength? I don't know anyone that doesn't need that in terms of keeping their body healthy and getting stronger, whatever it is. It's so much of the core. So it's not going to hurt anything by mentioning that. And you've identified that helps people walk through the door, and then you can help them with even more things. And that's just like marketing 101, is like, figure out what your dream student needs and wants to hear, right? And then figuring out, and no bait and switch. You're not baiting and switching anyone. You are just finding the words that they resonate with so that you can help them.
Yeah, it's funny that you use the term bait and switch, because I wrote that in my bullet points here. That's what I felt like I was doing for a while.
Really? Talk to me about that.
So there's so many aspects of pelvic health that are affected. So one thing is hip pain is a pelvic health thing. Lower back pain is a pelvic health thing. So I started calling classes like yoga for hip pain, or gentle yoga for your lower back, and trying to get people in. And then the word vagina would come out of my mouth and they'd be like, whoa, I did not sign up for this. I thought we were talking about my back. So I definitely did that for a while as well, where I was like, I don't want to put pelvic health, because people are going to think, oh, that's not for me. I don't want to talk about anything down there, because we are very disconnected from that area of our body until something goes wrong and we're aware of it.
Right. And then we need it. I use the example all the time of like, when we have something going wrong, if I have something wrong with my foot, I am going to a foot doctor, a very specific doctor that focuses on one thing. And so when someone has something going on in their nether regions, they're going to find someone who focuses on those areas. And I think I have learned so much through watching your business grow and, just learning more in the yoga world about pelvic health, how many things really are connected. But I can totally see how if you use the term back pain and then you say vagina, you will have some uncomfortable people. But and to that point, I just want to say, like, look how intuitive you are of figuring out what your audience responds to. So the word core, maybe they're more receptive when you say core, that connection, but you won't use back pain anymore because that didn't land very well. So you're just learning as you go and you're being so receptive to your dream student.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to think so anyway.
You are. And that's what I want to jump in and just talk about. Like, I loved hearing that journey. And I just want to hit the nail on the head and call attention to something because you are in my membership. And when you mentioned this, I thought, this is who I want to interview on the podcast to talk about this. Because you mentioned this phrase, and I love it so very much that you said this. And seriously, correct me if I'm wrong when I say these words, but after you niche down, you made more money.
Yes.
So I talk about money a lot, and yoga teachers, there's a lot of yoga teachers who don't like to talk about money, but I want yoga teachers to earn more money, to make more money, because yoga teachers give back and they do something so amazing in the world that I don't want you to have to do 3 other jobs so that you can share yoga. I want you to earn more money sharing yoga. And you have done that by niching down. So I want to talk about money a little bit.
Okay.
Yes. So tell us as much as you're comfortable. You certainly don't have to tell the entire story or anything, but how talk to me a little bit about some results. Like, how did you know it was directly related to niching down?
So I would say back probably May, June, I started playing around more with how I was incorporating the term pelvic health into my website.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped shying away from the term pelvic floor, pelvic health, pelvic floor dysfunction, which is not my favorite thing, but it is the medical term that is used. And my husband, who is my website guy and my SEO person, even though he knew what I was striving for, suddenly he was given more tools that he could use to put into my SEO, which was huge.
Right.
So it became his mission to figure out all the terms that he could use to make sure that my website was popping up a little bit more frequently when people are specifically looking for either yoga teacher who helps with pelvic health or personal trainer who helps with pelvic health. So yeah, back to that. That was around May, June that I started adding those things in. And then flash forward to July. So all of my series are around 6 to 8 weeks, and they only really vary because I'm the only employee of my business. And sometimes I need to take a holiday.
Yes.
So I try not to put a holiday in the middle of a session, but instead try to work my sessions around times that I know I'm going to be away for training, or times that I know my kid has a dance recital or vacation. Right. And so usually I'm only seeing money for classes every 6 to 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a session starting up in July. So that would be a big influx of money. Mm-hmm. And July is typically super slow.
Right.
So
Summer is hard.
Exactly. People are going away. People don't want to commit to things. So I opened up registration for the summer. I actually cut a couple of classes out of my schedule to accommodate for that, because I want to make more bang for my buck. I'd rather teach less classes and have people move into other classes than to be teaching all across the board and just making a little bit here and there, especially summertime. So I cut my weekend classes. And then in July, at that point in time, I had my highest earning month.
That's amazing.
In almost 3 years of business.
That's huge. That is absolutely huge. And at that moment, when you shared this story, that was when I thought, this is when we have to do the interview. I knew it because all of the things, thinking about, and I'm super blessed to be able to see this from the side of you sharing so much about how you're doing this. And I can't remember the exact timing, but you also opened a new space. Was
Yeah.
it in July or was that later? Was it in
I
August?
it was August. It was mid-August that I officially opened. I opened for one day before I went on vacation.
Right. So you were in the middle of creating a brand new yoga space that was all yours, right? And you've got so much of this going on, but the idea of tweaking your website, which I also know we talked about your about page inside of the membership as well. So you were really tweaking your website a lot in terms of your niche and really updating that. So you said SEO. So basically, you niche down and just got really clear with your words on your website, and that drove more traffic.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, including
incredible.
like I live in a decent sized city. I think there's like 360,000 people. So from one end of the city to the complete opposite end of the city is a 20-30 minute drive. And I had people from the opposite end of the city coming to my studio because they wanted to work with what I was doing. They liked the small class aspect because it was limited to 7 people.
Mhm.
And they liked the pelvic health stuff.
Right. And
So
that's the thing is people will drive further. They will pay more for specialty offerings because it's so specialized. And I really love the small class size for you as well because it is a sensitive matter. Sometimes people don't want to talk about that in a class of 50 people. That might be really overwhelming or uncomfortable. So the fact that you have small class sizes is right on. I think it's great. And I just love how you've tailored so much of it. Like you figured out that you liked and enjoyed working with small classes. And wouldn't you know, it actually works with your dream student too. Like it just worked out and all of this came together. And now you have a super solid business that is consistently earning money. It wasn't like July was your only high month. Like you've consistently brought this in because you've stayed really, really focused.
mhm. Yeah. And it is interesting to me that one of the reasons I started the small group classes is because that's all I had the room for.
Right.
Like it started off as 5 people, and then we expanded the space a little bit, and then it was 7. And even now at the new studio, it's 8. But in my yoga classes, because it's got this personalized aspect, I really encourage people to either if something isn't feeling good, tell me now. Tell me in this moment if you feel
Mhm.
comfortable. And because they've all been with each other for so long, they're getting more and more comfortable with it. Once in a while,
Right.
somebody new comes in and I'll get an email between classes because I encourage people, if you don't feel comfortable in class, talk to me after class or send me an email
Right.
and let me know. And I can make some tweaks and stuff because chances are, if you're feeling one way, there's a chance at some other point somebody else is going to feel that way as well. So it was interesting that kind of this thing I fell into really played nicely to what my niche ended up being.
Right. And how sweet is that you have these small class sizes and now you can be even more connected with your students that are in there because you couldn't, like, there would be no availability for you to take emails if you had a class size of 50 or 30 and you had several of them a week. That would just not be doable for you to have that connection. Yet now you are because it is such a small class, but you're still earning more money. Like, I wish I could really like look at anyone in the eye right now who is like, but I'm so nervous. But I'm so nervous, Amanda, to say what my niche is. And what I want you to know, dear yoga teacher listening, if you're feeling that, is Dominique is telling you the story of how something changed in the matter of a month or two and really focusing in on a niche and earned more money because of this. Now, is everyone going to have the exact same story as you? No. However, if you really focus in and follow your passion, I do believe that you will have that story at some point. It might not be 2 months down the road, but if you really dedicate yourself, then and following that passion, like, you will earn more money. It works every single time that someone is really dedicated, in which you are.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Well, I get the front row seat of being able to see. Maybe it's a back row seat, I don't know. But whatever kind of seat I'm in, I get to see that. And so I think you're a huge inspiration to any yoga teacher listening. So, the one thing I wanted to make sure that I asked you is if there is a yoga teacher listening right now and has heard me talk about niching down and is just not sure, maybe they're not sure what their niche is, or they're not sure about niching down. Like there's kind of two different camps here. Some people just don't even know what the niche is, but what is your advice for them? What is your advice for the people who they know it is in them and they know it, but they are so nervous to do it?
So when I was first starting with niche work, the idea of the ideal student always comes up. And this was a big struggle for me. I wrote fictional people that so I would be kind of just so I wouldn't put it all on one person. Like I would feel guilty if I was like putting this on a real person. And there was a disconnect with that. And then I tried doing it with people I knew, and there was kind of a disconnect with that. And then for me particularly, it was like one day it clicked that my ideal student was me 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, so when I thought about being doomed to a life of diapers, or that at the time I couldn't play with my kids because I also had pelvic pain, or it was a singular kid at that time. That I couldn't run or jump because I was feeling pressure on my pelvic floor. That after the birth of my second kid, I gave myself a minor prolapse. All of these things, this is all me from before. And all I really have to do is know more than that person who is my ideal student, which I do because then I dove deep into learning about it. The other thing I would recommend is if they're sitting in a class or if they're getting ready to go to a class and they really don't want to go, there might be something to that.
Yes.
I've been in that situation as well where I was like, oh, I really don't want to go and teach this class tonight. And eventually I cut it. And it's
Right.
scary because it was a well attended class, but I just wasn't feeling it anymore. And I've even had people recently ask, oh, are you going to bring that class back? And I was like, no, maybe I'll find somebody else to do it,
Yeah.
but I'm just not interested. But if there's a class that you just can't wait to go into every single week and connect with the people in it and talk about whatever it is. In my case, it's pelvic health. Like I love going in and educating them and telling them why we're doing this and seeing things click of how hip pain is related to pelvic health. I do a lot of workshops around town as well, and different events and shops and things like that. And I talk about a lot of times I'll be, stand in a room and I'll do like, do you or do you not? And, show me a hand if you pee your pants. And people
Mm.
are kind of shy about it. But then when I start mentioning lower back pain, suddenly they're realizing, what? That's a pelvic floor thing too. Or the hip pain, that's a pelvic floor thing too. And these are all things I help with. They're just not at the forefront of my business anymore.
Hmm.
So kind of taking a look at what you're doing, what you love doing, what you don't love doing, because the things that you love doing are the things that are going to fill your cup. And the more that people know that you're the go-to person to do that thing, the more people are going to start coming to you.
Right. It's so very true to just follow that. I love what you're saying in terms of if you look forward to teaching a class or if you don't look forward to teaching a class, like that's a huge indicator. And there was another yoga teacher that I interviewed some time back, not on the podcast, but in a video blog. And she said, teach teach the class that you would want to take or you would want to teach, even if no one showed up. So I
Love
love
that.
that idea of thinking like, if you just created such an amazing class that you would teach it to yourself. Even if no one showed up, you just teach that class because it was so much fun for you to create and it's awesome.
Mm.
That is when you found something. And for that, I would say, don't get discouraged if no one shows up. They just didn't know. They just didn't know. And then it comes down back to what did you do to promote that class? And let's do more of that. Because if you love that class that much that you would want to teach it if no one showed up, and if no one really did show up and you still wanted to teach it, like you had that moment, like, I know we can get people in your class if you love it that much. Like, I have no doubt about it. And that is you, how you were just saying, like, follow that intuition. I think there's something inside of us that just knows. And what about the person who's just, they know what it is, but they're nervous? What would you say to that person that's just, who's listening right now and they're like, I know exactly what I want to teach, but they're scared to say it. They're scared to change their entire website to be really specific or to say the words that they know might offend other people.
People will always be offended.
Right.
um, they're not your people. Like, I very strategically put close to the top of my about page the phrase, and I talk about vaginas a lot. That way, nobody has wasted their time reading into my website. Right then and there, in the first paragraph, they know whether it's something they want to potentially pursue or not. And when you're honest up front, it actually creates a much better relationship with you and the student. Because if they're coming to your class and they don't want to be there because they feel like this wasn't what they expected, you're getting that energy too. And you really don't want to go in there and talk to them or be in the class with them because you don't feel like they want to be there, so it doesn't make you want to do it, and then it creates this really weird, strange dynamic. But back to the point is, take baby steps. Take baby steps. I think when I first started really focusing on my niche, I kept it very clinical. I kept it very only using the minimum terminology because we are talking about a sensitive area in terms of how people view it. I actually was just watching a clip from, I think it was like the one that Maria Shriver and Hoda something does, whatever morning show that is.
Right.
They have a women's health doctor I think she might have a physiotherapist, but I can't remember. And the hosts were so uncomfortable about
Really?
it was really awkward to watch. And they actually had a little disclaimer at the beginning saying, hey, there's going to be some language being used that might not be suitable for little ears. And I'm thinking, why? It's a body part.
Right.
Like, little girls and little boys have little vaginas and little penises. Like, they're there. Why? Like, there's this feeling of there's something wrong with that area of the body. So I guess if I can do it, so can you.
Right.
I feel like I don't want to toot my own horn, but I feel like when you start offering yoga classes that deal with what is viewed societally as a sensitive area, it was easier to stay clinical. And then as I got more comfortable in my niche, then I started expanding it more because I wanted to bring more of my personality into it. I have a pretty high student retention rate, and the only people who really leave are the people who wanted a very quiet yoga class. But because everyone's kind of, catching up with each other sometimes they are asking questions out loud, that doesn't resonate with some people. So typically when somebody leaves my studio, that's the reason why. Because they were expecting that they would walk into the room, nobody would say anything, and that had nothing to do with my niche.
Right.
At all.
Right. And you have that high retention rate because you state your niche and your personality is upfront. You do videos, you showcase yourself on your website and on social media. So I would say that's why you have such a high retention rate, is because it's very known what they're walking into. The people who that didn't stay, that walked away and didn't stay with you, they just probably didn't know. They weren't paying attention to all the signs that you gave before, and it's totally going to happen. Maybe they thought they would try it and it didn't work out for them, and that's okay. But I love what you said about taking baby steps. That is a great point, and figuring out what that baby step is for each individual is going to be different. For you, it was clinical. Maybe it's, for someone else, it's just narrowing down to a little closer, a little closer, a little closer to that niche of, maybe you want to work with, children, but you're terrified to just say, you're going to work with children. So maybe you work with families for a while and then niche down to the children. Or maybe you take a class here and there and just see, okay, do I really like that? Is this really what I want to do? Do I want to start experimenting saying it? And one of the things I love to encourage yoga teachers to do is to experiment with your words. You don't have to change your website. You don't have to change anything yet. Just tell people, I'm a pelvic health yoga teacher. I focus on pelvic health, or I work with children. I work with fill in the blank, whatever it is, and see how people respond and see how that feels in your own body and see just how people resonate with it and how you do, because that's when we can get really clear on we have a gut reaction to things. And I think we can know so much by just speaking words to people, but we have to be willing to try first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think looking back at my own journey, it was definitely like, I'm a teacher who works with pelvic health. And then I kind of listed everything. And if you want to go back further than that, it was, I'm a teacher who helps with hip pain.
Right. Yes.
But just kind of adding just little things at a time and then starting to expand on them. Like I'm gearing up for the new year to actually rewrite all of my class descriptions because they are still from back when I was trying to be very like tiptoey about things. So yeah, like for instance, the word going back to the whole clinical thing, I never said initially like, hey, I peed my pants or this is yoga for peeing your pants. I was like, it's for incontinence.
Right.
It's pelvic pain. Now I would come out and say, hey, if you have painful sex, that's also a pelvic floor concern, or kind of identifying a little bit more deeply. But I find especially too, just watching people who are really interested in niching down, they feel like they need to have a perfectly clear view of what they are niching down to right now or in the next couple of days, when it can start super small. I mean, even going back further than hips and lower back, I started with prenatal, postnatal, and that was kind of my segue into it. So that's even now my viewpoint on things, even just doing pre and postnatal, although it's a niche in of itself, it's still pretty broad because not every prenatal, postnatal woman person is going to have these symptoms or be interested in helping with those symptoms. I even thought initially I wanted to work with new moms, but when I niched down, so I was marketing, I was on Instagram, I was like, I'm going to get the new moms into my class. But at this point in time, there's so much out there encouraging women to get their pre-baby body back that they were not interested in the function of their body whatsoever. So my biggest age group, I guess you'd say, at my studio are women who have teenager and adult children.
Wow.
And I didn't think I would ever be working with those women. And they weren't my ideal student. But then the more I worked with them, the more I realized I loved working with them. So even being flexible to experiment to see what comes your way, because I was convinced all I was going to work with was new moms, because this is still a newer concept. They're going to be open to it. My mom is embarrassed that I'm talking about peeing my pants. Coming back to my mom. My grandma kind of was like, what do you do? So I never in a million years thought that people who are closer to their age would be coming to me for help. So still even having a bit of a broad picture, because every time I wrote my ideal student, it was like, Susie Lou, 32. I don't know. I picked a name that I figured I would never hear anybody coming out. And it was probably something along those lines, though not quite. But they were always my age.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I kind of let that go for a little bit and just opened it up and saw what happened, I found that, again, more women who had teenager or adult children were coming into my class. Their kids are having kids, but they're coming to my class. And they're trying to explain to their kids why this class is important. Their kids are like, I just want to get my pre-baby jeans back on.
Right.
I don't care what's happening there. I just want my pre-baby jeans back.
I love that advice of being flexible with what happens once you are willing to niche down and just are willing to follow that path, that you can figure it out along the way. Because just like you, I have a very similar story of I would have never in a million years wrote down, I'm only going to work with yoga teachers. Even though I loved yoga, I didn't think I'm only going to work with yoga teachers. but I literally can't imagine working with anyone else on the planet at this point, you know? And it's always interesting to see how once you niche down, it's like you don't want to work with anyone else ever. Like like once you find that passion, you know, I could help a dentist or insurance agency or whatever. I could help them with marketing if they really needed me to help, but I don't have a passion for that. It's not the people. People are great, but I love yoga teachers. So I want to work with yoga teachers all the time. Just like you could help anyone on the planet with a yoga class. I have no doubt of that in my mind that you could take any person and work with them and they would walk away feeling great. But you work best with what you're passionate about. And you followed this path from, you know, way back when, prenatal, postnatal, then it was hip pain, and now it's all the way down to pelvic health and how specific you can be. And not only do you know the knowledge, like you have all of this knowledge in your head, but now you're stepping into, you've gone even further and you're in your own body, speaking it. Your personality is everywhere when it comes to your brand, and you're doing it so incredibly well. So I think if there's any advice to listen to, it is yours in that being flexible, but understanding like it's going to be great, but the path is going to be a little wavy and you just have to follow it to get there.
Yeah, for sure. Like back when I started pre and postnatal, I had no idea that there was this whole extra piece in there.
Right.
And I just feel like I happen to be at the right place at the right time for a lot of different things.
That's great. Well, I would say you were in the right place at the right time, but you also seized opportunities. So there was a lot of your story that I hope people that are listening really grasp onto and think, okay, you took the opportunity to say yes to things that you were probably nervous to say yes to. Yes, it was a really cool opportunity that you got to rent a space by the hour, but that would terrify a lot of people still. And they might not have said yes, but you did. So there's a few things in your story that it's like you said yes to a lot of things and you were absolutely willing to be flexible, which is like the huge takeaway with niching down because we can sit in front of a blank piece of paper or our computer screen and make a fake person up, but that is not the way that you're going to figure out what your niche is. Your niche is going to be figured out by taking one step in front of the other, and that probably does mean on day one of like, okay, Amanda, I'm ready to do this. Who is that? Is it you 3 years ago? That's so many people's niche because if you are transformed in a way, you can help other people. So is it that, or is it something that happened to your family member that you just want to help? You know, I know so many yoga teachers are really focused in on the mental health aspect of yoga and helping those under resourced communities because they witnessed someone in their family go through something and they want to help so many people. So it could be that, it could be so many things, but starting with this idea, just an idea, and then taking one step at a time and moving forward and following that path, I think is incredible. Great advice.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being on the podcast today. Oh my gosh, this is so great. Thank you for sharing so much of your story. Thank you for being in my membership. It has been truly a pleasure to get to know you and to watch this journey. It's been just really enlightening. And I hope everyone is just taking it in because so many of us can learn from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So, are you ready to niche down yet? Because if her story didn't light you up and want you to at least try, I don't know what will. I enjoyed so much about this interview with Dominique, but it's how she said to take it in baby steps when it comes to niching down that was really my favorite. So I want you to follow her lead and take it slow, one step at a time, knowing that things will evolve over time. Follow your passion and see where it takes you because you just never know what's going to happen with that. We can't see the end. We can't predict the end, but what we can do is take one step at a time. So your next step is to download that free guide so that you can declare your niche. Even if you're like, I don't even know what I want to focus on, Amanda, I want you to take that one step of downloading this guide and answer just one question. I want you to take this step because if that makes you a little uncomfortable, then that means you're going to step out of your comfort zone and then you're going to take the next step. Once we step out of that comfort zone, this is when we can grow. This is when our business can take that next step. So I want you to download the guide and then I want you to answer one of the questions and then say it to someone today. Just try it. Maybe today you run into someone that you haven't seen in a while and they ask you what you do and how things are going, and you say, I am doing so great. I specifically work with busy moms, or I work with adolescents, or I work with whatever it is. I want you to just test it out. Take it one step at a time, and then another, and then another. But I need you to start today. And until next time, give yourself permission to niche down and grace along the way. I'll talk to you soon.